Absolutely. We were talking earlier with Alec Bussey from the Hoosier.com. Obviously, Indiana loses out on Chris Liedlam, one of their absolutely top priorities. And so, of course, Indiana fans are going crazy. But there is cause for, I don't want to say, I guess, cause for concern, to wonder, because fans have seen so many other teams fill important roles with good players, players the caliber that IU needs, and once again, IU is not there, and I'm a little surprised. I said this earlier. Indiana is a program that is trying to get back to being Indiana, and with NIL and the transfer portal, I'm like, oh my gosh, there is nothing that I think that would have set Indiana up easier and faster to reach that, get back there, than with those two elements. And it's not quite there just yet for Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, listen, on one hand, you're right insofar as Indiana needs. I mean, Indiana's got spots to fill. It was clear Chris Ledlam was a priority target for them, and losing out on that recruitment, I think, was a undeniably a blow to the offseason. On the other hand, best laid plans don't always come to fruition. It's worth remembering Indiana has already landed 2 impact transfers in this cycle. Indiana has reinforced that front court that obviously lost so much with Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis going away. And the portal is not. I mean, the portal's. It sounds simplistic, but it's true. The portal's not shut now. This is one of those 6 1/2 dozen things. On the one hand, Indiana has added some guys that I think are going to help, some guys that I think fit, and some guys that I think are going to play meaningful roles next season. On the other hand, Indiana's missed on enough of those players that it wanted that you sort of look at it and say, you better shift your focus and find another. You better find kind of another sort of priority target to fill some of those roles fast, because the portal is always a moving feast. As you said, a lot of guys are off the board. It's also worth saying there are guys that maybe haven't entered the portal yet. It's always possible that more players will enter the portal that you didn't know would be options or opportunities. Ledlam was a tough beat. I don't think there's any way around that. I think it was clear that Indiana prioritized him, saw him as a really sort of strong piece of its off-season plans, and to lose him to Tennessee was a blow. It doesn't detract from what Indiana had already done in the portal, adding Peyton Sparks and Khalil Ware, and it also doesn't. It's worth saying, prevent Indiana from coming up with some other plan going forward. But like I said, best laid plans don't always work out. You can go in and say these are our priorities, and we're gonna show them all the NIL opportunities, and we're gonna promise them all the playing time, and blah blah blah. They might still find something they want more somewhere else. And so what you've got to be able, a lot of times in this sport and in that business, coaching, you're defined less by your ability to lay those plans and more by your ability to adjust and move on from them. And so that's the challenge for Indiana
now. I guess the biggest question then is, has Indiana basketball and Mike Woodson shown these guys, these veteran players that are in the portal, that Indiana can win, that you can win at Indiana? Has he shown that yet? I know that they're much better than they were in the previous 6 seasons. They've made the tournament 2 years in a row now, winning one tournament game. But is this the place that's looked at that where you can go and win? Is that the thing that's holding them back? Because it certainly is not NIL. It's certainly not the resources. It's certainly not anything else, because you're going to be seen as much as any place playing for Indiana and at Indiana. So I have to start paring it down. All right, what is the difference maker for these guys? I wonder, is Indiana looked at as a place where you can win that?
You're not going to win every recruitment, though. I mean, like that's.
I don't know. I get that. Absolutely.
No, I'm not suggesting you think they're going to bat 1,000. I mean, it's you're not going to win every one of them, and even if you've shown, I mean, like Nick Timberlake is probably a good example. I mean, he was a guy Indiana was in on. He turned out to be a guy that basically everybody was in on. UConn wanted him. North Carolina wanted him. I think Kansas is where he eventually wound up. The point is, you can have established all those things. You can say we've got good NIL opportunities. We've got tons of minutes for you. We've put guys in the pros. In UConn's case, we are literally the reigning national champion, and he still goes somewhere else. Like not every recruiting decision or transfer decision has to be sort of a referendum on the state of a program. Now, listen, until Indiana wins its next Big Ten title, goes to its next Final Four, those questions are always going to be asked because it's Indiana and because of the nature of its recent history. I think Mike Woodson has certainly done a lot of good for his reputation and his program's reputation in his first 2 seasons. Gotten Indiana back to the tournament twice. Gotten Indiana to a place where it's putting guys in the first round of the NBA draft, where it's got All-Americans, where players are winning Big Ten awards and things like that, where you're looking at Indiana and you're saying, I want to be part of the Indiana team that's playing Kansas, or I saw what Indiana did in that environment at Purdue. I can go be a part of that. I think all that helps. It doesn't mean you're going to win every time you step up. And it also doesn't mean that every time you lose a recruit, it's because there's something fundamentally wrong with your program. And so I think I'm not trying to say that like Indiana is fine for not getting Chris Ledlum. It's clear he was a player the staff had identified as a real priority for them this offseason. And in an offseason where I think everyone understood internally and externally, Indiana was going to have to rebuild through the portal. That Indiana kind of went all in on a pretty experienced roster last year, knowing Trace Jackson Davis. Saw that from day one as his last year of college, knowing Miller Kopp and Race Thompson were done after last season. And probably, at least at some point, having a pretty good idea that Jalen Hood-Schifino was the sort of player that might wind up being one and done. You sprinkle into that any portal attrition, and you were going to know that you were going to need to go into the portal to reinforce your roster. And so when you take losses in the portal, it hurts. But on the other hand, like I said, not every recruitment that you miss out on means there's something fundamentally flawed.
But there has to be something, because you look at other programs like North Carolina and the horrible season they had last year, and yet they, second year in a row, they're not having any problem filling the need that they need.
Again, though, they wanted Nicholas Timberlake, and he went somewhere else.
I'm not saying they're not going to lose, but they also got they did get a nice piece for where they needed. Not that Indiana has it with Khalil Ware. He's great. That's perfect. That's a great TJD replacement of sorts. But Louisville, look at Louisville, how bad they were. And they've got like the number 7 class. And of course, Kentucky, I don't even want to talk about that. They've got 4 players inside the damn top 11, I think. So it's the strength I just haven't seen the strength. They've gotten some good gets, of course, with Jalen Hood-Schifino and Malik Renew, but it's just, I'm not seeing the consistency yet. But I don't know everything. I agree. You're not going to get everything. My gosh, there's no way. because you have to swing and you have to swing at a lot of them. But they're not getting as many as I would have thought, because like I said, I thought Indiana is set up as well as anyone to recover through this with the portal and NIL and all of the resources that go along with that. And it's here, and it's been hit or miss, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say the programs you're talking about are the ones that aren't going to have trouble also selling NIL opportunities to recruits, whether it's portal recruits or freshmen, high school recruits. When you're talking about the Kentuckys, the North Carolinas, whatever, those are the ones that you shouldn't maybe be having. Those are the ones that won't have trouble basically telling their own story through NIL and things like that. Now, obviously, it's a little different when it's Chris Ledlam in Tennessee. Transfers are also just different. Guys who have less time to play are going to be maybe more mature about, I want this specific kind of role and I want this opportunity because I only have a finite amount of time. There's a lot less sort of projection, and maybe if I go here, I'll develop and I can do this, and a lot more sort of, I need to be with somewhere where I'm comfortable from day one, just sort of boom, I go. I'm not disputing that Indiana, is staring at year 3 under Mike Woodson with a ton of questions. I'm not arguing that at all. Like you bring up North Carolina. North Carolina is also a team that didn't make the NCAA tournament last year. And okay, you can say, well, that should make it easier for Indiana to recruit against North Carolina. Maybe. But it's also sometimes easier to sell kids on the idea, well, look, it's a clean slate. You can come in here and get whatever you want because.
But Indiana has that too, because they have so much open. There are so many minutes to offer for those guys. That's another perfect scenario for Indiana to sell.
Like I said, you don't win every one. They're 2 or 3 right now. The 3 that they really clearly kind of went all in on were Chris Ledlam, Kalel Ware, and Peyton Sparks. They're batting, 2 for 3. They probably need to add at least 2 more players. We'll kind of see where that develops and who winds up, kind of coming into the frame for those spots. I know there's been talk about Dalton Connect. My understanding is they've been in touch with Cormac Ryan, the Notre Dame transfer, who I think is going through the NBA process right now too.
Well, he's already committed to North Carolina.
Oh, did he? Did I miss that? Yeah. I've been off the last couple of days. There you go. Well, then I don't know how serious that got, but I think their desire was Dalton Connect. Now, if you can't get him on campus, then you can't get him involved.
That's another problem. They were not able to do that.